Hello, hi, hello, woohoo! Happy Pride Month! Yay! Woohoo! This is the closest that I have to a rainbow pride flag. Is my rainbowy curtain thingy that I have that goes in front of my door that you guys never get to see because my door is always shut. So this is the closest thing I have. So yay! Happy Pride Month! Woohoo! and part of the rainbow, I just don't want to reveal my colors right now. Anyways, yay! Oh, right. I need to explain the actual footage itself. I know it's really long, but I wanted to do it all in one go. I don't know, several long months ago, I don't even know when it was exactly. Action camera, a GoPro basically, but not the brand GoPro. I didn't know that they're called action cameras. Apparently they're called action cameras, and GoPro is the brand, like Kleenex is the brand of facial tissues, but we always call them Kleenex. Anyways, it's an Akaso V50 Elite, and it took me a long time to figure out how to get them from my camera onto my computer for the viewers' enjoyment. So this is a dump of all the video that I've taken with my camera, and yes, it's crappy and shaky and out of focus and la-di-da because I don't know what the hell I'm doing with it. So please be kind and gentle with me because it's my first time using this thing. So the video that you are going to see is my first times using it and trying it out. It was from a long time ago, so that's why there's like Christmas stuff, and there's like hiking footage, and like I go to the park and play on swings with it. That was fun. And then I did like a homemade MacGyvered a rig for Spirit, put a camera on his back. I found some software to stabilize it. Not the greatest in the world, but it is what it is. And I'm going to read the book on top of that because the audio wasn't the greatest for this footage anyway, so I might as well get two birds with one stone and show this footage as well as I need to read a book. It's been a long ass time since I've read the book. Okay, I do want to do an ASMR. The inspiration has not struck me yet for the type. Yes, so that's about it. Thank you guys for being patient and caring and sweet with me. You guys are wonderful. And yep, as a reminder, follow me on Instagram. I've only got like 11 people following me right now, which is a little sad. And also, please come support me on Ko-fi. I've gotten one supporter so far. Yay! Thank you so much to whoever you are. I don't remember. Thank you. That is going to, all the money is going towards a microphone, a binaural microphone, so that I can make ASMR videos that are a million times better. And we all want a million times better ASMR videos. Okay, I have rambled on enough and played with this thing long enough. Alright, let's get reading. Okay. And I'll just do my outro now. So, love you guys so much. Hopefully it won't be as long until the next one. I don't know. My mood has kind of been all over the place, so we'll see. I'm also trying to plan a wedding, and that's been stressful. Oh, what the hell? Hang on. And I can't show you my dress, obviously, but I picked out a dress. I'm so excited. So I have my dress. Yay! And I'm planning on doing a tattoo, I think, on the inside of this arm of the three bears of We Bare Bears. That's a cartoon. representing me and my future stepdaughters. I haven't gotten the details on that figured out yet. It's, you know, we each all like, you know, one of the three bears. We want to add some kind of personal detail to that, but you know, don't know yet. I mean, we have a while. I'm not getting married until next September, so a little more than a year. But I'm having my, so we're doing it in fall, so fall colors, yay. And I'm just sending some fabric to my bridesmaids and telling them, you know, get whatever skirt, get whatever dress or whatever you want, just as long as it matches this color, you know, as closely as possible. So like a dark red, you know, kind of, well, this red is too bright, but yeah, I mean, kind of this red. So this red, so I got a bunch of fabric from Joann's, so I'm gonna send them this, and I got some other fabric just so that I can start making a vision board. I'm going all like Bridezilla on this. Well, I haven't gotten Bridezilla yet, but I'm going crazy with this. Anyways, hey, it's something that is relaxing, something fun. Like picking out colors is the fun part. Trying to find a venue is not the fun part. And so since it's fall, I haven't found an orange that's exactly right yet, but so these are going to be my colors. So I don't know how well these read on camera, especially since it's like kind of dark in here, but so these are going to be my colors. I don't know how well that reads, but so there's that red for the bridesmaid dresses, and then like a tan, you know, tannish, and a dark yellow. On camera that looks like bright yellow, but it's more of a dark yellow. And then, you know, like a hunter green, and then this orange, I don't know how well it reads, but more of a burnt orange. It looks really orange. More of a burnt orange. They didn't have any solids that were, but kind of that orange. And then of course fall leaves. So those are gonna be the colors. My favorite thing that I have thought of so far, oh my god, I'm a genius. So fall, right? What is fall without, can you guess? Pumpkin spice lattes. Ah! No, I'm not gonna serve pumpkin spice lattes. But on the tables, you know, like the centerpieces, I want there to be pumpkin spice latte scented candles. Because they do. I've looked on Amazon and they make them where it says on them specifically pumpkin spice latte candles. It has to say it, pumpkin spice latte. And there's even someone on Etsy that turns, you know, the glass Frappuccino Starbucks bottles, turns those into candle holders. It'd be super awesome if I could like turn actual Starbucks cups into candle holders. That would be amazing. You would think that it would work because they're like wax lined, but I don't know. But if I could get a candle holder, whatever, to say Starbucks on it, or it might just be better for it to just say pumpkin spice latte. I don't know, but there has to be pumpkin spice latte, pumpkin spice latte candles. I love it. And maybe pumpkins on the table, but that might be too. I don't want it to get too confused with like October. And another like of my favorite parts, I want our wedding cake toppers. I want our wedding cake toppers to be our figurines. I want them to be wearing straight jackets. Because this might seem like offensive, but this is like our favorite story to tell people. Me and my fiance actually met each other, no joke, in a mental health hospital, behavioral hospital, mental behavior, whatever, in a psych ward. We met in a psych ward. No joke. We were both incarcerated into a mental health hospital at the same time. That's where we met, and we love telling people that's where we met. We met not like on Tinder or on a dating site or at a coffee shop or whatever. Nope. We met in the loony bin. We went crazy at the same time. I love it. So the figurines, yeah, I want them to be wearing straight jackets. I love it so much. Okay. Yeah, alright. I'm going to read the book now. And we're halfway through. Yay, we're halfway through. So it's going to get even, it's going to get even more interesting from here on out. And at least hopefully you can enjoy the video that I've gotten so far. I know it's like super fisheye at points and stuff. Like, bear with me. I've never used it before, and I'm not good with cameras in general. With all the like 1080p and I don't know what any of that stuff is. So just bear with me. Okay, I'm done. I promise. See you guys. See you next time. I guess I should have put my hands back on. See you next time. Love you. Bye. Mwah. Mwah, 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 mwah.
Not long after taking her first spill, Trisha began passing the time of day with Tom Gordon. At first this seemed strange, weird even, but as the long hours of late afternoon went by, she lost her self-consciousness and chattered away quite naturally, telling him which landmark she was heading for next, explaining to him that a fire had probably caused this swamp, assuring him that they would be out soon. It couldn't go on like this forever. She was telling him that she hoped the Red Sox would score about 20 runs in the game tonight, so he could take it easy out there in the bullpen when she suddenly broke off. "Did you hear something?" she asked. She didn't know about Tom, but she did. The steady whapping pulse of helicopter blades. Distant but unmistakable. Trisha was resting on a hummock when she heard the sound. She jumped to her feet and turned in a complete circle, hand up and shading her eyes, squinting at the horizon. She saw nothing, and before long the sound faded. "Spaghetti," she said disconsolately. But at least they were looking. She slapped a mosquito on her neck and got moving again. 10 or 15 minutes later she was standing on the half-submerged root of a tree in her filthy, unraveling stockings and looking ahead, both wondering and puzzled. Beyond the straggling line of broken trees where she was, the bog opened out into a flat, stagnant pond. Running across the center were more hummocks, but these were brown and seemed made of broken twigs and gnawed branches. Sitting on top of several and staring at her were half a dozen fat brown animals. Slowly the lines on Trisha's forehead smoothed out, and she realized what they were. She forgot all about being in the swamp, about being wet and muddy and tired, about being lost. "Tom," she whispered a little breathlessly, "those are beavers! Beavers sitting on beaver houses, or beaver teepees, or whatever you call them. They are, aren't they?" She stood on tiptoes, holding the trunk of the tree for balance, staring and delighted. Beavers lounging on top of their stick houses. And were they watching her? She thought they were, especially the one in the middle. He was bigger than the others, and it seemed to Trisha that his black eyes never left her face. He appeared to have whiskers, and his fur was a luxuriant dark brown, shading almost to auburn around his plump haunches. Looking at him made her think of the illustrations in The Wind in the Willows. Finally, Trisha stepped off the root and got moving again, her shadow trailing out long behind her. At once the head beaver, so she thought him, got up, backed away until his hindquarters were in the water, and slapped down smartly with his tail. It made a whacking sound that was incredibly loud in the still hot air. A moment later they were all diving off the stick houses, going into the water in unison. It was like watching an aqua diving team. Trisha gazed at them with her hands clasped against her breastbone, and a big grin on her face. It was one of the most amazing things she had ever seen in her life, and she understood that she'd never be able to explain why, or how the head beaver had looked like a wise old schoolmaster or something. "Tom, look!" she pointed, laughing. "Look, the water! There they go! Yeah, baby!" Half a dozen V's formed in the murky water, moving away from the stick houses in bow waves. Then they were gone, and Trisha started moving again. Her current landmark was an extra-large hummock with dark green ferns growing all over it, like wild hair. She approached it along a gradual arc instead of walking in a straight line. Seeing the beavers had been great, totally ghetto, and Pepsi ease, but she had no desire to encounter one while it was swimming underwater. She had seen enough pictures to know that even little beavers had big teeth. For a while, Trisha uttered a shriek each time a submerged bit of grass or weed brushed against her. Sure, it was the head beaver, or one of his minions, wanting her out of the neighborhood. Keeping the beaver condos always on her right, she approached the extra-large hummock. And as she drew closer, a sense of hopeful excitement began to grow in her. Those dark green ferns weren't just ferns, she thought. She had been fiddleheading with her mother and grandmother 3 springs in a row, and she thought those were fiddleheads. Fiddleheads were over in Sanford, had been for at least a month, but her mother had told her they came into season quite a bit later inland, almost up until July in especially marshy places. It was hard to believe anything good could come out of this smelly patch of creation, but the closer Trisha got, the surer she became. And fiddleheads weren't just good. Fiddleheads were delicious. Even Pete, who had never met a green vegetable he liked, except for frozen bird-eye peas nuked in the microwave, ate fiddleheads. She told herself not to expect too much, but 5 minutes later, after the possibility first occurred to her, Trisha was sure. That was no mere hummock up ahead. That was Fiddlehead Island. Except maybe, she thought as she drew closer, wading slowly through water that was now thigh-deep. Bug Island would be a better name. There were lots of bugs out here. Of course, but she kept replenishing her mud pack and had pretty much forgotten about them until now. The air over Fiddlehead Island absolutely shimmered with them. And not just midges and no-see-ums. There were a gazillion flies as well. As she drew closer, she could hear their somnolent, somehow shiny, buzz. She was still half a dozen steps away from the first bunches of plump, furled greens when she stopped, hardly aware of her feet settling into the muddy mulch under the water. The greenery bordering this side of the tussock was shredded and torn. Here and there, soggy, uprooted bunches of fiddleheads still floated on the black water. Further up, she could see bright red splashes on the green. "I don't like this," she murmured, and when she next moved, it was to her left instead of straight ahead. Fiddleheads were fine, but there was something dead or badly wounded up there. Maybe the beavers fought with each other for mates or something. She wasn't yet hungry enough to dare meeting a wounded beaver while gathering an early supper. That would be a good way to lose a hand or an eye. Halfway around Fiddlehead Island, Trisha stopped again. She didn't want to look, but at first she couldn't look away. "Hey, Tom," she said in a high, trembling voice. "Oh, hey, bad." It was the severed head of a small deer. It had rolled down the slope of the tussock, leaving a trail of blood and matted fiddlehead ferns behind. It now lay upside down at the water's edge. Its eyes shimmered with nits. Regiments of flies had lit on the ragged stump of its neck. They hummed like a small motor. "I see its tongue," she said, and her voice was far away, down an echoing hallway. The gold sun track on the water was suddenly too bright, and she felt herself swaying on the edge of a faint. "No," she whispered. "No, don't let me. I can't." This time her voice, although lower, seemed closer and more there. The light looked almost normal again. Thank God. The last thing she wanted was to faint while standing almost waist-deep in stagnant, mucky water. No fiddleheads, but no fainting either. It almost balanced. She pushed ahead, walking faster and being less careful about testing her footing before settling her weight. She moved in an exaggerated side-to-side motion, hips rotating, arms going back and forth across her body in short arcs. She guessed if she had a leotard on, she'd look like the guest of the day on Workout with Wendy. Say, everybody, today we're doing some brand new exercises. I call this one, Getting Away from the Torn-Off Deer's Head. Pump those hips, flex those butts, work those shoulders. She kept her eyes pointed forward, but there was no way not to hear the heavy, somehow self-satisfied drone of the flies. What had done it? Not a beaver, that was for sure. No beaver ever tore a deer's head off, no matter how sharp its teeth were. You know what it was, the cold voice told her. It was the thing, the special thing, the one that's watching you right now. Nothing watching me, that's crap, she panted. She risked a glance over her shoulder and was glad to see Fiddlehead Island falling behind. Not quite fast enough, though. She glimpsed the head lying at the edge of the water one last time, the brown thing wearing a buzzing black necklace. That's crap, isn't it, Tom? But Tom didn't answer. Tom couldn't answer. Tom was probably at Fenway Park by now, joking around with his fellow teammates and putting on his bright white home uniform. The Tom Gordon walking through the bog with her, this endless bog, was just a little homeopathic cure for loneliness. She was on her own. Except for not sugar, you're not alone at all. Trisha was terribly afraid of the cold voice, although not her friend, was telling the truth. That feeling of being watched had come back, and stronger than ever. She tried to dismiss it as nerves. Anyone would have jumpy nerves after seeing that torn-off head, and had almost succeeded when she came to a tree which had been scored with half a dozen diagonal cuts through its old dead bark. It was as if something very big and in a very bad frame of mind had slashed at it on its way by. "Oh, my God," she said. "Those are claw marks." "It's up ahead, Trisha. Up ahead, waiting for you. Claws and all." Trisha could see more standing water, more hummocks, what looked like another green, rising hill, but she had been fooled that way before. She saw no beast, but of course she wouldn't, would she? The beast would do whatever beasts did while they were waiting to spring. There was a word for it, but she was too tired and scared and generally miserable to think of it. "They lurk," said the cold voice. "That's what they do. They lurk. Yeah, baby. Especially special ones like your new friend." "Lurk," Trisha croaked. "Yes, that's the word. Thank you." And then she started forward again because it was too far to go back. Even if something really was waiting up ahead to kill her, it was too far to go back. This time what looked like solid ground turned out to be solid ground. At first Trisha wouldn't let herself believe it, but as she drew closer and still couldn't see water cutting through that mass of green bushes and scrubby trees, she began to hope. The water in which she was wading was shallower, only up to mid-shin instead of to her knees or thighs, and there were more fiddleheads growing on at least 2 of the hummocks. Not as many as there had been back on Fiddlehead Island, but she picked what there were and gobbled them down. They were sweet, with a faintly acrid aftertaste. It was a green taste, and Trisha thought it absolutely delicious. She would have picked more and stored them in her pack if there had been more, but there weren't. Instead of mourning this, she relished what she had with a child's single-mindedness. There was enough for now. She would worry about later. She snacked her way toward solid ground, biting off the furled nubbins and then nibbling on the stalks. She was hardly aware of wading through the bog now. Her revulsion had passed. As she reached toward the last few fiddleheads growing on the second hummock, her hand froze. She heard the somnolent buzzing of flies again. It was a lot louder this time. Trisha would have angled away from it if she could, but as the swamp ran out, it had become choked with dead branches and drowned bushes. There seemed to be only a single halfway clear channel through this mess, and she'd have to take it unless she wanted to spend an extra 2 hours struggling over submerged barriers and maybe cutting her feet up in the process. Even in this channel, she was forced to clamber over one downed tree. It had fallen just recently, and fallen was really the wrong word. Trisha could see more slash marks in its bark, and although the butt end of its trunk was lost in a tangle of bushes, she could see how fresh and white the wood of the stump was. The tree had gotten in something's way, and so the something had simply pushed it over, snapping it like a toothpick. The buzzing grew louder still. The rest of the deer, most of it anyway, was lying at the foot of an extravagant splurge of fiddleheads near the spot where Trisha finally climbed wearily out of the swamp. It lay in 2 pieces which were connected by a fly-shining snarl of intestines. One of his legs had been torn off and stood propped against the trunk of a nearby tree like a walking stick. Trisha put the back of her right hand over her mouth and hurried rapidly on, making weird little sounds as she went, and trying with all her might not to upchuck. The thing that had killed the deer wanted her to upchuck, maybe. Was that possible? The rational part of her mind, and there was still quite a lot of it, said no, but it seemed to her that something had deliberately polluted the 2 biggest, lushest growths of fiddleheads in the bog with a deer's mangled body. And if it had done that, was it impossible to believe it might try to make her throw up the little nourishment she had managed to scrounge? Yes, it is. You're being a dork. Forget it. And don't upchuck for heaven's sake. The noises, they were like big, meaty hiccups, began to space themselves out as she walked west. Keeping on a westward course was easy now, with the sun low in the sky, and the sound of the flies began to recede. When it was entirely gone, Trisha stopped, took off her socks, then slipped her sneakers back on. She wrung the socks out again, then held them up and looked at them. She could remember putting them on in her Stanford bedroom, just sitting there on the end of the bed and putting them on while she sang, "Put your arms around me, 'cause I gotta get next to you," under her breath. That was Boys to the Max. She and Pepsi thought Boys to the Max were yummy, especially Adam. Sorry, I would have actually sung that if I knew how it went, and I'm not going to just make it up. She remembered the patch of sun on the floor. She remembered her Titanic poster on the wall. This memory of putting on her socks in her bedroom was very clear but very distant. She guessed it was the way old people like Grandpa remembered things which had happened when they were kids. Now the socks were little more than holes held together by strings, and that made her feel like crying again. Probably because she herself felt like holes held together by strings. But she controlled that too. She rolled the socks and put them in her pack. She was refastening the buckles when she heard the whoop, whoop, whoop of helicopter rotor blades again. This time they sounded much closer. Trisha bounded to her feet and turned around with her wet clothes flapping. And there, off in the east, black against the blue sky, were 2 shapes. They reminded her a little bit of the dragonflies back there in Dead Deer Swamp. There was no sense waving and shouting. They were about 1 billion miles away, but she did it anyway. She couldn't help herself. At last, when her throat was raw, she quit. "Look, Tom," she said, following them wistfully from left to right. North to south, that would be. "Look, they're trying to find me. If they'd just come a little bit closer." But they didn't. The distant helicopters disappeared behind the bulk of the forest. Trisha stood where she was, not moving until the sound of the rotors had faded into the steady hum of the crickets. Then she fetched a deep sigh and knelt to tie her sneakers. She couldn't feel anything watching her anymore. That was one thing. "Oh, you liar," the cold voice said. It was amused. "You little liar, you." But she wasn't lying, at least not on purpose. She was so tired and so mixed up, she wasn't sure what she felt, except still hungry and thirsty. Now that she was out of the muck and the goo and away from the torn corpse of the deer, she felt hunger and thirst very clearly. It crossed her mind to go back and pick more of the fiddleheads. After all, she could steer clear of the deer's body in the goriest, bloodiest places, surely. She thought of Pepsi, who was sometimes impatient with Trisha if Trisha scraped her knee while they were rollerblading or fell when they were tree climbing. If she saw tears welling in Trisha's eyes, Pepsi was apt to say, "Don't go all girly on me, McFarland." God knew she couldn't afford to go all girly about a dead deer, not in a situation like this, but she was afraid that the thing which had killed the deer might still be there, watching and waiting, hoping she'd come back. As for drinking the bog water, get serious. Dirt was one thing. Dead bugs and mosquito eggs were something else. Could mosquitoes hatch in a person's stomach? Probably not. Did she want to find out? For sure? Definitely not. "I'll probably find some fiddleheads anyway," she said. "Right, Tom? And berries, too." Tom didn't reply, but before she could have any second thoughts, she got moving again. She walked west for another 3 hours, at first moving slowly, then able to go a little faster as she entered a more mature stretch of woods. Her legs ached and her back throbbed, but neither of these hurting places drew much of her attention. Not even her hunger occupied her mind to any real degree. As the day's light went first to golden and then to red, it was her thirst that came to dominate Trisha's thoughts. Her throat was dry and throbbing. Her tongue felt like a dusty worm. She cursed herself for not having drunk from the swamp when she had the chance, and once she stopped, thinking, "Screw this, I'm going back." "You better not try, sweetheart," said the cold voice. "You'd never find your way. Even if you were lucky enough to backtrack perfectly, it would be dark before you got there. And who knows what might be waiting." "Shut up," she said wearily. "Just shut up, you stupid, mean bitch." But of course the stupid, mean bitch was right. Trisha turned back in the direction of the sun, it was now orange, and began walking again. She was becoming actively frightened of her thirst now. If it was this bad at 8 o'clock, what would it be like at midnight? Just how long could a person live without water anyway? She couldn't remember, although she had come across that particular fun fact at some time or other. She was sure that she had. Not as long as a person could go without food, anyway. What would it be like to die of thirst? "I'm not going to die of thirst in the darn old woods. Am I, Tom?" she asked, but Tom wasn't saying. The real Tom Gordon would be watching the game by now. Tim Wakefield, Boston's crafty knuckleballer, against Andy Pettit? Sorry, the Yankees' young left-hander. Trisha's throat throbbed. It was hard to swallow. She remembered how it had rained, as with her memory of sitting on the end of her bed and putting on her socks, this also seemed like a long time ago, and wished it would rain again. She would get out in it and dance with her head back and her arms out and her mouth open. She would dance like Snoopy on top of his doghouse. Trisha plodded through pines and spruces that grew taller and better spaced as this part of the woods grew older. The light of the setting sun came slanting through the trees in dusty bars of deepening color. She would have thought the trees in the orange-red light beautiful, if not for her thirst. And a part of her mind noted their beauty even in her physical distress. The light was too bright, though. Her temples were pounding with a headache, and her throat felt like a pinhole. In this state, she first dismissed the sound of running water as an auditory hallucination. It couldn't be real water. It was too darned convenient. Nevertheless, she turned toward it, now walking southwest instead of due west, ducking under low branches and stepping over fallen logs, like someone in a hypnotic trance. When the sound grew even louder, too loud to mistake for anything other than what it was, Trisha began to run. She slipped twice on the carpet of needles underfoot, and once she ran through an ugly little pocket of nettles that tore fresh cuts on her forearms and the backs of her hands, but she hardly noticed. 10 minutes after first hearing that faint rushing noise, she came to a short, steep drop-off where the bedrock emerged from the thin soil, a needle carpeting of the forest floor, and a series of gray stone knuckles. Below these, brawling along at a healthy clip, was a brook that made her first one seem like no more than a drip from the end of a shut-off hose. Trisha walked along the edge of the drop with perfect unself-consciousness, although a misstep would have sent her tumbling at least 25 feet and likely would have killed her. 5 minutes' walk upstream brought her to a kind of rough groove from the edge of the forest into the gully where the stream ran. It was a natural flume, floored with decades of fallen leaves and needles. She sat down and hooked herself forward with her feet until she sat on top of the grooved place, like a kid sitting on top of a slide. She started down, still sitting, dragging her hands and using her feet as brakes. About halfway down she started to skip.